And welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the Bears Brothers podcast. I am your host, Will DeWitt, and I am back after a mini 2-week hiatus in which I was working at a high school journalism institute at my alma mater, Indiana University, where I was working with some bright young minds of journalism's tomorrow. Oh, and of course, I gained us a few new listeners as a good number of the kids did come from the Chicagoland area. And just in case you're wondering what this journalism institute would be, it's pretty much training camp, but for high school journalists, preparing them to move on to college for their next step in their journalism life. Speaking of training camp, as of today, July 21st, we are less than 1 week away from the Bears reporting and practicing at camp. And on top of that, we are Dick Butkus days away from Bears football. That's right. You heard me correctly. There are 51 days between now and the Bears season opener. I can't wait. We only have 2 more episodes of our Countdown to Camp series remaining, and after a month of previewing positions, we have finally reached the backfield. That's right, today's episode is all about the Bears running backs, and as Nick liked to point it out right before we went live, the fullbacks. We can't forget them as well. Now, I can't do anything alone, and that's why I'm joined by my fellow Bears brother, Nicholas Moriano. Nick, how's it going, man? Long time no see, and by the way, you did a fantastic job stepping into the hosting chair while I was away.
Well, thank you very much for those kind words. Yeah, it was fun being the host. I got to do what you do on a daily basis, or not a daily basis.
No, like I say, not so daily.
I can't imagine seeing you on a daily basis. One week is, once a week is good enough for me. You gotta have enough of your Will. No, I'm just kidding. But dude, yeah,
put me down.
I'm sorry, Will. I'm glad you're back from camp. You're here with just me today, but we'll get the gang back together. But yeah, it's good to have you back.
Thanks, man. Yeah, again, you did a great job, but I'm the lead host, so don't think different. No, I'm kidding. I was telling people in the comments when I was gone, hopefully they don't think they're going to replace me now. But moving on, I want to see how long this episode runs. It's going to be interesting because we don't have a lot of players to hit on. We only have 8, 6 running backs and 2 fullbacks. And, Bears fans know coming into the season that the offense runs through Jordan Howard. This said, we did promise to preview each and every player currently on the roster, and we're going to hold true to that promise. So, Nick, I think that it would be best if we just work our way from the top down, and let's start with Jordan Howard. As we know, he finished last season second in the NFL in rushing yards, despite having 70 less carries than the league leader, Ezekiel Elliott. Howard was clearly more efficient than the Cowboy, and with a full season slated in front of him, he is poised to claim the rushing crown this season. Heck, he even said not that long ago that he is trying to be the #1 rusher in the league this year. Words that just get me so excited. So, Nick, how can Howard accomplish that feat?
Well, it's easy. I mean, he's got one of the better offensive lines in front of him, and I know that Dow Longins knows that he has the second best rusher yardage wise in the NFL, and give him a full season where he can just take over. And Ezekiel Elliott might miss a game next season due to suspension. That's just another factor in for Jordan Howard to be that leading rusher next season. The Bears are going to run the ball, no doubt. They brought in fullbacks. They're going to go back to where they're going to put a bunch in the backfield, pound the rock, and I think that Dow Longins finally gets it. He has a stud running back. He's going to utilize him. It's a first-year quarterback in Mike Glennon for the Bears this season, so I think he's going to rely on the running game, and then that'll just open up the pass. But definitely, he's poised to have a great season.
He really is. Because when I look back at Jordan Howard's tape last year, the one thing that really sticks out is his success between the tackles. It's an area of his game that he excelled at a year ago due to his patience behind blocks, his waiting for the holes to materialize. He can take his game to another level. I think so because obviously this Bears offensive line, with a little bit of continuity from last year to this season, they're just going to get that much better. And I also think it's going to help with whoever's going to end up starting at quarterback. You said Mike Glennon. We're all in an assumption that's going to be the case. But again, you never really know until we get there. But just remember, last year, Howard was able to put up those big numbers despite playing alongside, Brian Hoyer and Matt Barkley. Even though opposing defenses had to focus on Howard, he was able to just take charge. And I think if the Bears can just find a way to take a little bit of that focus off of number 24, he should have a greater opportunity to succeed. Don't forget as well that he had that surgery to correct his vision, so he should be seeing the field clearer than ever before. Yeah, that's right. He's going to be seeing this field clearer than ever before. Just let that sink in, Nick. I mean, if he was having a hard time actually seeing what's going on and he's able to do what he did last season with some 20/20 vision going on, who knows? He might be able to reach the end zone 20 some odd times.
Did you notice last season whenever he was on the sidelines, he was always squinting. And, I guess that's why. I mean, whenever he took off his helmet, you saw him on the sidelines, the guy was always squinting. You know
Whoa,
what? That vision.
what a keen observation there. I never even put two and two together.
Yeah, he was always squinting. And then now with the surgery, hopefully he's just wide-eyed, getting ready to get into the field just to go through all the holes that this Bears offensive line is going to create for him, because he's going to tear it up next season.
He is this season coming up, but
this season, yes.
All right, so even though Howard, he's a really good running back. Heck, I'd even say great. I don't try to throw that term around loosely, but is there something that you think he can improve upon for next season? For me, I think it's going to be his receiving. He did have 29 receptions a year ago. He averaged 10.3 yards per catch. But I think if he can just further hone that skill and becomes more of a complete back, he can take this offense to the next level just himself alone. But what about you? What do you hope he can improve upon?
The big thing that Jordan Howard needs to improve upon for this upcoming season is breakaway speed. There's a bunch of times where he was able to get through the hole, get to the second level, get past those linebackers, but not finish in the end zone. So the big thing for Howard, he did lose a little bit of weight. He's going to be a lot more conditioned going into his second season in the NFL. So what I would love to see from Jordan Howard is him finishing runs in the end zone. And that's just going to be with his breakaway speed. We know he's a little bit of a bigger back, but he is capable of it. And being the main guy this season, he's going to condition his body to be able to finish those runs in the end zone instead of being, tackled just short. Remember the Minnesota one, 67, 69-yard run that he had. He was out there in front, but he got caught from behind. So I want to see him be able to finish those runs when he breaks away in the end zone.
That's, funny you mentioned that, because he's actually said he's been working on that acceleration, that breakaway speed. You mentioned that he needs to be able to take more long runs to the house, because he did have 7 runs last year of 25 plus yards, but out of his 6 touchdowns, his longest came from only 9 yards out. So he needs to be able to take those plays to the next step and reach some pay dirt. And I think that if he can do that, again, I know this offense runs through Jordan Howard, but if he can make those big plays and convert them into scores instead of the Bears, last season, whenever he couldn't reach the end zone, it seemed like time and time again, they just kind of botched that red zone possession and had to settle for 3 points. So that 4-point swing could be the difference in a lot of the games. And remember last year, how many close games that the Bears are on the wrong side of. So that breakaway speed could end up being a difference maker for the Bears this upcoming season. But that said, Nick, I'm curious. I don't know if there's any more that you want to talk about Jordan Howard. So I think this might be a good time for a season projection. How many yards, how many scores do you have for him?
Man, so plays full season. He had 1,313 last season?
Yep.
Somewhere around there. So you got to, I think he's going to do better. There have been a bunch of analysts saying that since defense are going to hone in on him, they're going to know about him. I think he's going to get 1,500 yards. I don't know what the touchdowns are going to be, but I'll go give him 1,500 yards. I'll give him the rushing title.
All right, just guess touchdowns. I just want to see what you have to guess right now.
Touchdowns? We'll give him 8.
Okay. Whew. Well, you're close.
So he's going to have a monster season.
Yeah, dude, you're close to me. I had exactly 1,500 rushing yards as well, which I was like, I had to see what you're going to put for touchdowns. I have 10. I think this is a very modest, a very modest projection here, because he only had 6 a year ago, which I think he just left so much more on the table. And I think 10 would be a very good number, coupled with the 1,500 rushing yards. I think that'd be a pretty doozy of like a sophomore campaign for Jordan Howard. Any final thoughts on Jordan Howard before we kind of move on?
He's going to be the staple of this offense. I'm excited to see what he can do in year 2 in the Chicago Bears uniform. But I think in every statistical category, it's going to go up. Obviously, now he can see with that 2020 vision. He is the main guy, so it's going to be fun to watch him this season.
Yes, it will. He's only 23 years old. He's going to be turning 24 this November, so he's going to be the same age as his number, which I don't know. I think superstitiously, and I think that could bode well. I think it's all meshing together, just as your fingers indicated here on the YouTube feed. But all right, Nick, I think that's going to do it for Jordan Howard. So up next, we're going to sort out the rest of the Bears' backfield. Last year, they only kept 3 backs on their roster, which means only 2 more players are going to make the cut. Who will it be? We're going to explain soon, but first, I need to tell you about our sponsor, SeatGeek. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone, and it's by far the easiest way I've found to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere, and with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats. I actually just used SeatGeek to look at tickets to next week's Crosstown Classic between the Cubs and Sox, and there are still some amazing deals for all 4 games on both the north and the south side. So no matter which side you're on, if you want to attend one of these games, definitely check out SeatGeek, because SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. SeatGeek saves you the time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. Best of all, our listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code BEARS today. That's promo code BEARS, BEARS, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Alrighty, well, I'm Will DeWitt, joined by Nicholas Moriano. We are half of the Bears Brothers crew, and we are here breaking down the Bears backfield heading into training camp. So assuming that the Bears are going to keep 3 backs on their active roster, only 2 more players can make it. And by backs, I'm talking about running backs here, not fullbacks. The players fighting for these roster spots are going to be Joel Bognan. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Seems like there's one botched name per episode throughout this Countdown to Camp series, so we got to keep it rolling. Kadeem Carey, Tariq Cohen, Benny Cunningham, and Jeremy Langford. And Nick, let's start with the 2 backs who have the longest tenure here in Chicago, and that's going to be Kadeem Carey and Jeremy Langford. Do you think that both these players can make the roster or only one? To me, I think it's clear that I think at least one of these players are going to be the odd man out come September, if not both. I don't have either of these players being a lock. How about you?
Yeah, no, I don't have either of these players being a lock, but if I were to go with one of the 2, I'm going to go with Jeremy Langford. He was injured last season, and he was supposed to be the featured back, but luckily we did have Jordan Howard to fill in his place and took starting role and never looked back. But Jeremy Langford is a guy that potentially, he had trouble breaking tackles. He had trouble staying on the field, obviously, last season, but this is only his 3rd year. So we'll see what he can do. Kadeem Carey's been the year, I think he's going to his 4th year, if that's correct. So we haven't seen much. I know there's been limited playing time with him. Matt Forte was before him, and then you bring Jeremy Langford, Jordan Howard. So we haven't seen much from him, but if I had to guess, I would say Langford makes it over Kadeem Carey.
Okay, yeah. For me, between the 2, I'm just having a hard time deciding who I think has the best chance of actually making the roster, because I see it both ways. On one hand, Jeremy Langford did prove enough to enter last season as a starter, even though he kind of lost that job as the year progressed. He had 4 scores on 64 attempts, but that 3.2 yards per carry, to me, is a little worrisome. And he is recovering from that ankle surgery, so he might find himself behind the 8 ball headed into camp. And for me, it does feel like a lifetime ago that he had that breakthrough game against the Rams back in 2015, which is, by the way, his only 2 touchdown game. On the other hand, Nick, Carey, like you said, he hasn't had much of a role in offense. He's only had 111 carries over the past 2 seasons. Actually, but throughout his entire career. But he does provide some special teams value. That said, so does another player that we're going to get to in a minute, Benny Cunningham. But Brandon, he is the president, or the proclaimed president, of the Kadeem Carey fan club, and he isn't here to give us his take. But I think Brandon would be sad to hear that I think Carey's days in Chicago is numbered. He's never had a 100-yard game, and the most yards he's ever had on the ground in a single game was back in 2014. The former FBS rushing leader, I think, is going to have a hard time finding a spot on this year's roster. So putting all this together, Nick, I think the best answer is that there is a real possibility that neither of these backs make the roster, largely due to the addition to some talented backs, more specifically Benny Cunningham, and this year's 4th-round pick, Tariq Cohen, a.k.a. the Human Joystick. Anything to add on either Jeremy Langford or Kadeem Carey before we move on to the new additions to this Bears roster?
Yeah, no, what you said earlier, both of these guys, none of them are a lock. So they will, whoever has a better camp, I think will end up prevailing. I still think it's going to be Langford, but yeah, these guys are fighting for, playing a Bears uniform this upcoming season.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to watch this battle behind Jordan Howard, because there's a lot of talent on this, behind him. Not maybe Jordan Howard level talent, but enough talent to at least compete for the backup positions. So when we're looking at Tariq Cohen, Benny Cunningham, what do you like about these backs? Do you have any reservations about them, something you're hesitant about?
Well, what I like about Benny Cunningham, and I know we're going to mention it, is that he does have some very good special teams value. What was it? He averaged 27.1 on kickoff returns over his 4 seasons with the Rams. So, I mean, not only can he, contribute in the running game, but he also is an asset on special teams. And at kick returner, there hasn't been a good Bears kick returner since Evan Hester was here. Let's be completely honest. That position hasn't had as much value as it had. That position can change games. And that's how I think Cunningham might make this roster, because he doesn't just add value in the backfield. He can run the ball. Maybe he's not the best running back, but he can run it. But he can also play special teams, which is going to play dividends into who makes this roster.
Yeah, no, I agree. With Cunningham, I do think too, I think he's going to be better suited here in Chicago with the zone run scheme. Over there with the Rams, he's doing a lot of ISOs, a lot of counters, a lot of traps, which really didn't suit his game, because when I watch him, he just displays a lot of patience, vision. He can get to that second level and make linebackers miss. He's not like that powerful type of running back. And I think here in Chicago, he has a system put in place where that can really suit to his strengths. And on top of that, he does provide value on special teams. If you want a full breakdown of that, definitely check out our Count on the Camp special teams episode, because I explain why I think he's going to end up being this team's kick returner. But he also provides value on offense in terms of his pass catching ability. Throughout his career, he has 93 catches for 752 yards and I think 1 score. So that's something where the Bears are looking to add more of, is some more catches out of the backfield compared to a year ago. So that's why I like Cunningham a lot heading into camp. But what about Tariq Cohen, Nick? What do you like? What are you a little bit hesitant about?
Well, again, with Tariq Cohen, he's also a guy that can add value in the passing game. We've seen what his highlight tapes, the human joystick, he just makes people miss. I think he's going to be a mismatch nightmare for linebackers once he gets his opportunity to actually play. And, that could possibly be this upcoming season, but we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I mean, at 5'6", he's just a smaller back. Obviously, you're not going to want him in pass protection. That's just not ideal for a guy his size. So that's something that I guess is negative about him. I guess he only can play on certain situations, like if it's obvious passing down and you need passing protection, you have a running back in who's going to block before going off for a route. Maybe that's not his suit, but a guy that's going to line up outside on a linebacker, I like that situation. So we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously, when he's running, he's going to be behind that giant Bears offensive line. Maybe gets, mistaken and just moved away. You won't see him. Right. So maybe it'll create some holes and, gain some yards. But yeah, his size benefits him and also makes it a disadvantage for him.
No, exactly. It really does. I love looking at it. I love all the stats that he just displayed in college. He had 5,619 career rushing yards. He averaged over 7 yards per carry last season. He has that uncanny ability to just make wicked cuts that just don't seem possible. And I think that his running style really complements Jordan Howard's perfectly. And I think that if he can come in and put tacklers on their heels and make misses in the open field, he can end up being an X factor for this Bears offense. He did have 4 touchdowns that came from 83 yards last season. So he can definitely make some of those home run plays. And I think looking back to last year, Nick, remember how many times Jordan Howard was untouched for the first 20 yards, but he was just unable to run by the safeties? Tariq Cohen can. Cohen has that breakaway speed. So if the Bears offensive line can block like they did a year ago, create those open lanes, Tariq Cohen doesn't have to worry about those linebackers getting to him. They doesn't have to worry about those big defensive linemen reaching them within a couple of yards of the line of scrimmage, because he's just going to blow right past them, and then he can just take the ball to the house. And that's what I really like with Tariq Cohen. You mentioned that he has the value out of the backfield as a receiver. He had 98 catches at NCAA for 945 yards and 3 scores. But it all comes back to size. And that's something that I, too, am hesitant about, because when I see him, one former Bear comes to mind over and over again, and that's Garrett Wolfe. Wolfe was actually bigger than Cohen. He was an inch taller and about 10 pounds heavier. But I can just remember too many times where Garrett Wolfe pretty much got sat down by defenders. They just pick him up by one hand and just set him on the ground. He's just that light, not a lot of strength. But I do think Cohen has more strength than a Garrett Wolfe had. So that's going to play hopefully in his favor. So even though I'm worried, I'm not saying that I don't think he can come in and prove the doubters wrong and not only make this team but succeed. I really think he can, and I think that's why Ryan Pace took a chance on him here in the 4th round. But I just need to see how he stacks up come training camp next week against some NFL competition, because that's going to be a big jump for Cohen coming from the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference all the way to the NFL. So that's what I'm looking for out of Cohen. But I do think he has the tools necessary to succeed in the NFL. We just have to see him put it all together come training camp. But out of these two, who do you think has a better chance of making the team? I think Cunningham is the obvious choice. But again, I don't see why you would spend a 4th round pick on a running back if you don't see him on this roster.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely going to both make this roster. I'll go with more Tariq Cohen over Benny Cunningham, only because I mean you drafted him. These guys are usually. It's not very likely that you draft a guy and you just cut him during training camp. Most guys usually make the roster at some point or practice squad. But yeah, I would if I had to choose between those two, I'm going to go with actually Tariq Cohen. Just the Bears obviously invested in him. They think there's some potential upside. And I just looked up a guy similar. How big did you say Tariq Cohen was? Or weight-wise? Did you have that?
175, right? 5'6", 175.
Okay. Darren Sproles 5'6", 190. So he has a couple of pounds on him. Same size. Not, I mean, well, they're both shifty guys, but Darren Sproles is an established player in the league. But I will say that between Cohen and Cunningham, I will go with Cohen for over him to make this roster.
Okay. I mean, that's fair to me. I think it's really, to me, is a toss-up between the two. Actually, spoiler alert, I don't care if I say it now. I have them both making the roster over Langford and Carey, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But for me, yeah, I think Cunningham just has so much value as a returner, a position that the Bears have just struggled so mightily with. He's going to make the roster just for that reason alone. And then I think come offense, he's going to prove people that he actually can still play running back as well, especially with this zone blocking scheme here in Chicago. And when I look at Cohen, I just think of one word, and that's juice. Like, he's going to provide a spark, some electricity to this Bears offense, because Jordan Howard, he can hit some breakaway plays, but for the majority of his plays, he's a kind of grinder type of running back. And then when you put Cohen in there, the guy who can hit the home runs, the guy who can take the ball to the house from, the majority of this field, that's what I want to see. And that's why I think using him not only in the running game, but maybe the screen game, this Dowell Loggins can get a little creative here and really put these guys in the best position to succeed. So I have a hunch that both these players are going to be on the roster come September. But lastly, Nick, real quick, I just want to mention that the Bears do have one more running back entering camp, and it's that Joel, I'm not going to even pronounce his last name, starts with a B, the rookie out of NIU. Hey, another Garrett Wolf reference, but he signed as an undrafted free agent, and there's not a ton on him when I look up his stats, his tape, etc. But from what I can tell, he's a downhill side runner who projects as like a short yardage back, which is something that I don't think we have a lot of need for here in Chicago. In fact, according to Football Outsiders, the Bears had the best power success in the NFL a year ago, meaning that they led the league in converting on 3rd and 4th down with less than 2 yards to go, as it succeeded 75% of the time, which I'm pretty sure the league average was 64%. I just don't see, Joel sticking just due to the, plethora of running backs coming into camp. I think the practice squad, I think they can find better use for it, maybe even hold that spot for Tariq Cohen if he's just showing that he's still a little bit behind making the jump from, D2 all the way to the NFL. But Nick, anything to add on Joel, or do you want to maybe hit on the fullbacks real quick?
Yeah, you know what? I won't hit on Joel. I mean, Northern Illinois, it would be, it's a good story if he makes it Bears, but don't see it happening. But yeah, the running backs, Michael Burton, who the Bears signed, was from Detroit. 3 years in the league. He played 31 games over the past 2 seasons, and the Bears have 2 fullbacks on stretch. So they want to go and put a fullback in the backfield and, just go back to the good old days where you just pound the rock. The other guy on the roster is Freddie Stevenson, rookie from Florida State. Haven't watched much of his tape. When I wouldn't think that most people watch a lot of fullback tape. Just kind of putting that out there.
More power to them.
Yeah, more power to them. But I have not. But just be aware, people, that the Bears do have 2 fullbacks. I do have one of them making it. So we'll see what happens. Come training camp and see how these guys are utilizing the offense.
Yeah, I feel what I've seen from Michael Burton is really positive and what he can do in terms of blocking and lead blocking. And not just that, but he can also, he provides a little bit of leadership because he's been around. He knows he's a quick learner, all that good stuff. But I think if I had to guess between 2, it's going to be Burton over the rookie for sure. But that said, I'm excited that the Bears are actually trying to go a little bit more old school, bring back the fullback. It reminds me of the days of Jason McKee, leading the way for Thomas Jones. That's what I miss here in Chicago, that kind of old school pound the rock kind of football. And with Jordan Howard, we have the perfect tool to do so. With the offensive line, we have the perfect bulldozers leading the way. So with an extra fullback there, just all signs pointing to old school Chicago Bears football, which I really am excited to go come watch here in a week, come training camp. But that said, let's take a quick break because I want to just announce that we've reached the goal, Nick. We reached 34 reviews on Apple Podcasts, which we've been asking for throughout the entirety of summer. So to each and every one of you who have done so, thank you so much. In fact, our 34th review was the Walter Payton quote: "When you're good at something, you'll tell everyone. When you're great at something, they'll tell you." I thought that was fitting, and I thought that was perfect. So to the person who actually left that review, great job. That one put a big smile on my face this morning. So thank you for that. But that said, that was our goal. But with it being over 50 days until week 1, we might as well keep going, right? So let's try to get 20 more reviews on Apple Podcasts. And let's hit Brian Urlacher's number 54. And if we do that, we've been asking Brian to get on the show for a while. Hasn't really reciprocated. We've asked Peanut Tillman, someone we've had on here for before, about it, but it just doesn't seem to be working out. But I have a hunch. If we can get 54 reviews for Brian Urlacher, we can get him on this show. And I believe that you would like to watch that. I would be ecstatic to be sitting here with him, interviewing him, talking about his days in Chicago, talking about life after football. So help us out. Let's get to 54 reviews on iTunes before the season starts. And of course, if you're watching us live on YouTube or watching the replay of us as well, our goal is to reach 1,000 YouTube channel subscribers before the season. And I think we only need 100 and what, Nick? 24, if my math is correct, because we have 886.
Not very good at math, but probably around there. I'm going to go with what you're saying.
All right, so yeah, help us out. We're almost there, 886. We just need to reach 1,000 before the season. And of course, that helps you make sure you never miss an episode, that make sure you get a notification every time we go live, which during the season is a little easier because we do have our live post-game show that follows each and every Chicago Bears game. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Thank you to everyone who has given us a review, and a future thanks to all those who are going to do so after watching this episode. But Nick, I think it's time to wrap up the show with a couple of big picture questions. So we all hinted towards it. I already gave my spoiler alert, but if you had to project the 3 Chicago Bears running backs as of today, who do you think makes the roster? Heck, what do you think the chances are that they actually keep 4?
You know, that's what I had. I actually had the Bears keeping 4 on the roster. And obviously I have Howard. I have Cohen. I also have Benny Cunningham. But I think that the Bears do find a way to get Jeremy Langford on this roster right now. I think that, look, Tariq Cohen is a guy, I think more of a situational player his first year, but I think he still makes the roster. Howard obviously is the lead dog. Jeremy Langford was injured. We'll see what he can do now. Like you mentioned, Will, he was projected to be the lead guy. So the Bears saw enough in him to feel comfortable with him being, the lead running back going into last season. So I think that with that being said, he does still stick around this roster. And then Benny Cunningham, if he has a good enough camp, shows that he's productive in the special teams and especially a kickoff returner, he makes this roster. So I do have 4, and I know we're not including fullbacks, but I also have Burton making it as well. So that's 5 backs. It's going to be tough, but we'll see what happens. I mean, if that's the case, if we keep it tight end, then maybe I would say Langford is the guy that's outside looking in.
Yeah, I think so too. My 3, if I had to go 3, I think it's going to be Cunningham, Howard, and Cohen. No order, obviously. I just saw Cunningham first in my notes. Howard is the clear-cut starter. He is the bell cow. No question about it. But, okay, so Howard, no question. Don't need to discuss him. Cunningham, the value on special teams and also the experience he brings to the table, I think helps him make this team. Cohen, I just have a hard time putting him on the practice squad because I think someone's going to nab him up, and I don't think Ryan Pace wants someone just to take his 4th-round pick. So he's going to make this roster. I think if you're going to be a good general manager in this league, you have to admit your mistakes. And I think if Jeremy Langford comes to camp, still looks a little sluggish, not like he's turning his legs, not breaking a ton of tackles, looking like the Jeremy Langford that we saw in the early portions of last preseason, the first couple weeks of the season before he went down with that injury, I think that there's a good chance Ryan Pace admits, okay, that wasn't the best draft pick. That was my first draft here in Chicago as a GM. So let's move on with a new group of guys that I brought in to take this up a notch, to shake things up a little bit. And I think Kadeem Carey, being a Phil Emery guy, someone who hasn't seen a ton of action on the offensive side of the football, is someone who I don't think provides that much special teams value. I think he's only on the field for like 25% special team snaps a year ago. I think he's gone. Sorry to all those in the Kadeem Carey fan club, but who knows? He might go to another roster and end up making more of an impact than he did here in Chicago. I'm not saying that his career is over. I just don't think his time in Chicago is going to continue much longer. But yeah, those are going to be my 3. And if they do 4, I think it'd be Langford. I just have a hard time seeing them fitting 4 on this roster with so much so up in the air in terms of the wide receivers, how many they're going to bring, tight ends, that defensive side of the football as well. They
did have 4 in 2015. So they did have 4 in 2015.
Was that with only 2 quarterbacks though?
What was that? Cutler, obviously, and
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
I think
so
I think that was the case. And then they have more tight end depth this season. So yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting how this roster shapes up because you can keep more at one position than you did obviously a couple seasons ago, but they did have 4, went to 3 in 2016. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, it's tough for me because like Jeremy Langford, someone who since he's been here, I've been, high on for the most part. I mean, once Jordan Howard took over, I mean, there's no questioning. Okay, we got to go with this. But like, I hope he can turn things around for him a little bit. Come back from injury, come back a little bit more hungry now that he knows maybe the pressure of coming in as a starting running back, replacing Matt Forte, was a little bit too much for him. I mean, he's still young. It's only his second year. We still didn't even see that much in him his rookie year. He just had a couple of those big games, which got people pretty hype. But yeah, well, it'd be interesting to see how it all plays out. And again, it's all going to come down to who has the best camp. I think that's where all of our answers are going to come from. Who's going to not produce only in practice, but also those preseason games. All right, Nick. Next question. What would be the ideal split of reps between Howard and his backups?
Whew, man, Howard is back. Well, let's say, okay. I would love Howard's going to be in there first, second down. But if it's like a 3rd and long, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, I would say, I mean, Howard, yes, he's hopefully improved on his pass catching, but you want the guy that's better suited for that. Maybe that's where Tariq Cohen can go in and make an impact if he makes his, is starting off on the 53-man roster, or a Benny Cunningham, someone like that, or a Langford. A guy that, well, actually, Langford's has trouble with catching as well, so I won't put him there. So he has to do better at that. But that's where, it's kind of hard to split that. But you want Howard in the majority of the time because he is your workhorse. And with that 2020 vision that he got with the surgery to have 2020 vision, hopefully that increased, obviously, his vision, and he can now be better at pass catching. So, but yeah, maybe 3rd and long, 3rd and 10 is where you want the guys who have the better hands.
Dude, you're putting it all together for me tonight because, again, you mentioned earlier with him squinting. Now you're mentioning that's going to help him catch the football. I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking about on-field vision and running, his ball carrier vision. And I never even thought that maybe that's why he had a hard time gauging the ball coming at him. Because a few times it's just kind of like right off the hands a little bit and like just seemed like he was a little off with where he thought it was going. So, yeah, oh my. You were putting
he was just playing blind last year. So he got 1,313 yards playing blind. So imagine now that the world is clear, he can see. So he's gonna tear it up.
Dude, imagine how he feels like when he's just walking around like, oh, I can see now. Well, there's grass.
That's what I look like,
All right, so this might seem like a silly question, Nick, but scale at 1 to 10. How important is the Bears running game to Chicago's success this season?
10. It's a 10. The Bears need to have a great run. They will. And that's what the Bear right now. That's the team right now. Their offensive identity is going to be the run game this upcoming season. And for them to be successful, for the open up the play action pass, they need to be able to run the ball effectively to keep defenses honest. They have to run the ball effectively.
Yeah,
these receivers won't get open if the running backs aren't producing and gaining, good yards on 1st and 2nd down. So it is vital that the Bears, inside zone schemes is how they like to do it. But, maybe that's switch it up just so teams do not key in on it. But it's going to be vital for them to run the ball effectively.
Yeah, and we mentioned this throughout the Countdown to Camp series when we talked about like the defensive positions and like how tough it's going to be going up against some of these offenses, especially in the early portion of the season. And I think if the Bears can rely heavily on this run game, really chew the clock, really keep those offenses off the field, that's going to be their best bet from coming away with a couple victories, at least a couple, because those first 4 weeks, like you wrote that article a couple weeks ago, it's going to be tough. And I think if they want a chance, they're not going to win the shootout. Not with Mike Glennon, not with, the current offense, how it's built. They're going to win the games by chewing the clock, taking care of the football, setting up the play action, and keeping opposing offenses off the field. And I think the Bears defense is more equipped to handle those offenses than they were a year ago. So if you can put those two together and play complementary football where the offense is keeping the defense fresh, the defense is taking care of business on their end, and the Bears can go back out there and grind the clock some more, the Bears can come away with a few surprise victories this season. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Last question, and it's the one that we end every show with here for Countdown to Camp. When it comes to training camp, Nick, what's the one thing you're going to be keeping an eye on in terms of the running backs?
So I know with this surgery that Howard did get, I want to see if he's more elusive. He's not much of a make a move in the backfield and then find the hole. He patiently waits and hits the hole. Maybe now, I don't think the vision, maybe it played a little bit of effect on him. Maybe it actually helps him out a little bit more now. Now he can see the hole a little bit better. Tariq Cohen, I want to see also as well, like the hole doesn't even have to be that big for him to fit through. So I want to see how small of a hole he can fit through. Just what he does to some of these defenders. I know Jarrell Freeman was saying that he is just a shifty little guy. I want to see him. I want to see him break somebody's ankles. Not break.
Okay, wait a minute.
Not break. Not break.
Okay.
There's wood. There's wood right here.
God.
There's wood right here. Break some. Make him look bad. I want to see that a bunch of times because I used to love that from, obviously Devin Hester would do that all the time, but want to see that as well. Benny Cunningham in the return camp, you really don't see much of those reps. But you see those reps in training camp, but they're not going live or anything. So, but those are my big things. What are you looking forward to?
Well, since I've been gone for a while, I decided to add more than just one thing. But I mean, you did too, so I guess this is okay. So. And Brandon's not here. John's not here, so I can take a few moments here. But for me, I want to see how the reps are going to be split early and how it shifts throughout camp. I want to see how Tariq Cohen stacking up against the NFL competition. To me, I think that's going to be a big question mark, and it's something that I'm very excited to find out. I want to see if Jeremy Langford, if he's looking healthy or not. Then, of course, Benny Cunningham. Where's he slated on the depth chart to start? Let's see how he kind of moves around as the preseason kind of unfolds. All things that I'm going to be paying extra special attention to. Also, throughout this episode, you and I both discussed the importance of pass catching backs a fair amount. And I want to see how they're utilizing screens, because with the Bears offensive line being as mobile as it is, I think that running back screens can really help Chicago move the ball in chunks this season. And I think it might be not a trick up our sleeve, but one of our bread and butter plays. A screen pass to Tariq Cohen, a screen pass to Benny Cunningham. Heck, a screen pass to Jordan Howard, let him do his thing. I think if the Bears can do that, it would be a great way to add a little bit more to the mix, because last season we didn't see a lot of that. The screens that we ran were primarily wide receiver screens, and I want to see it shift a little bit more to the backfield as well. But Nick, do you have anything to add before we sign off for the night?
I'm glad football's back. We will be in training camp next week, and it's just an exciting time to be a football fan again.
It creeps me out thinking that a week from tonight, I'm going to already been to 2 Chicago Bears practices for the 2017 season. Feels like yesterday we were just doing the state of the franchise, looking back to last year's group, breaking down all the free agents, breaking down the draft picks. And a week from today, we're going to be 2 practices in, and we're going to, and legitly, like in the blink of an eye, Bears football's here, people. So don't miss it. Stay with us. Stay tuned. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Bears Brothers podcast. I want to thank you all who are watched live, or if you're listening to the podcast, thank you so much. Today, fun fact, it was like 100 degrees and humid where I'm at. I don't know about you, but it feels like the football gods know. Training camp's around the corner and the weather has shifted accordingly, which is all exciting for me. So next week, Monday, we're going to do a show on Monday night breaking down the Bears quarterbacks. It's our final countdown to camp podcast, and afterwards is all going to be training camp practice reviews, training camp insights. Can't wait to share that. But with the quarterback show, we're going to have our last guest of the Countdown to Camp series, and that's going to be Aaron Lemming. He's going to be joining us to break down Mike Glennon, Mitch Trubisky, Connor Shaw, Mark Sanchez, I guess. I guess we can do that if we want. And so we'll be back next week to break down the quarterbacks. And don't forget, we'll be there. I'll be there at least for the first day of training camp, first day of practice. No pads, though. And I'll be there for the next 4 days. Nick's going to show up when he can, and we'll be here discussing our observations and insights. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at the Bears Bros, as we're going to be tweeting things that normal media can't, because we're fans and we can discuss formations, who's lining up where, and more fun stuff like that. So make sure you follow us there. But that's going to do it for this episode. Until next time, bear down, Chicago.